Hi guys, welcome or welcome back. Thank you so much for being here, for all of your support. It's so greatly appreciated. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't yet. It really helps me out, especially because I'm still such a small channel and because YouTube's not really a fan of the true crime community. So that really helps me to get my videos pushed out into the algorithm. With that, I hope everybody's having a great day and that you're all happy and healthy, and let's get started. Lowell Lee Andrews was born on September 21st, 1940. He was a zoology major at the University of Kansas, where the sophomore played the bassoon and was described as the nicest boy in his hometown newspaper. In reality, Andrews fantasized about poisoning his family and moving to Chicago to become a gangster and a hitman. November 28th, 1958. Lowell Lee and his 20-year-old sister, Jenny Marie, were both home from school for Thanksgiving break. On the day of the murders, Jenny Marie was watching television with her father, 50-year-old William, and her mother, 42-year-old Opal. Lowell Lee was upstairs reading the novel The Brothers Karamazov, a philosophical novel that discusses God, free will, and morality in depth. After he finished reading the book, Lowell shaved, put on a suit, and walked downstairs, holding a rifle and a .22 caliber Ruger pistol. He shot his sister, 20-year-old Jenny, first, once between the eyes, with the rifle, killing her instantly. He then fired 6 shots at his mother, Opal, and 2 shots at his father, William. William did not die from his wounds and was able to crawl away into the kitchen. Andrews then followed his father into the kitchen and fired 15 more shots into him from the pistol. After his family was gone, Andrews opened the window, removed the screen, and ransacked the home in an attempt to make it look like a burglary gone wrong. He also emptied his mother and sister's purses onto the floor. After this, he drove to his college apartment in an attempt to establish an alibi. He picked up his typewriter, spoke to his landlady and his roommate. He then went to a gas station and spoke to employees. After this, he went to the Granada movie theater and watched the 1958 film Mardi Gras. After the movie ended, he spoke to multiple theater employees in another attempt to strengthen his alibi. After the movie ended, Andrews threw the guns in the Kansas River, went back home, fed the dog, sat on the porch, and then decided to phone the police. When officers arrived, they noted that Andrews was cool and calm. When they tried to question him about what had happened, he simply told them to look in there. When asked about funeral arrangements, he replied, "I don't care what you do with them." The Andrews family was Baptist, so the coroner called their minister to the scene. At the sheriff's office, Andrews asked to speak to the minister privately. The minister sat down, gave Andrews a Coke, and asked, "You didn't do this terrible thing, did you? And if you did, now's the time to purge your soul." After the meeting with his minister, Andrews confessed to the murder, but pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Andrews was sent to a mental institution where he was diagnosed as schizophrenic, but doctors concluded that he was aware of what he was doing when he killed his family. He would later admit to authorities that he wanted the family farm and the money in his father's bank account. The insanity plea, not surprisingly, was unsuccessful, and Andrews was found guilty and sentenced to death. Almost 4 years to the day of the killings, Andrews was executed by hanging on November 30th, 1962 at 12:01 a.m. His last meal was fried chicken, french fries, lettuce, soda, vanilla ice cream with strawberries, and cigars. David Brom was born on October 3rd, 1971. He lived in Rochester, Minnesota with his mother, 40-year-old Paulette, his father, 41-year-old Bernard, his sister, 14-year-old Diane, and his brother, 9-year-old Rick. In the evening of February 18th, 1988, police found the bodies of Paulette, Bernard, Diane, and Rick. 2 brothers were missing from the slain family: 18-year-old Joe, who had moved out of the home prior to February 18th, and 16-year-old David. David's school would phone police to let them know that students at the school had informed them of rumors that David was the one responsible. David's friend would come forward to tell police that on the morning of February 18th, while she was on her way to school, David stopped her and told her to skip school with him, so she did. While they were hanging out that day, he told her that he killed his parents, brother, and sister. He told her that he had gotten into an argument with his father the night before at about 11:30 p.m. possibly about a certain type of music that David was listening to. I'm guessing the argument really bothered him because he stayed up until 3 a.m. dwelling on it. He went on to tell his friend that in the morning he walked into his parents' room, killing his father first with an axe, then his mother, then his brother. Finally, he walked into the hallway, saw his sister standing over his mother, and she was the final victim. David Brom was apprehended the following day while using a payphone. He was initially going to be charged as a minor, but his history of mental illness would prompt the courts to change him to an adult. All 4 family members were found with numerous gashes in the head and upper body. Police would find the axe in the basement with blood on it from the victims and David's palm print on the handle. David pled not guilty by reason of insanity, but the jury ended up finding him guilty. On October 16, 1989, he was ordered to serve 3 consecutive life sentences. He will be eligible for parole in 2041.
Good evening. Topping tonight's News 11, police charge a 16-year-old boy with 4 counts of first-degree murder after his family is found axed to death in their Rochester home.
Tonight, there are more questions than answers as police search for a motive.
Police arrested David Brom this morning after they caught up with him at a town post office. He offered no resistance. In court today, Brom listened passively to the charges against him. Now the question is whether to try him as an adult or juvenile. The ordeal happened yesterday in a suburb on the outskirts of Rochester, and the whole town is in shock. We have a team report tonight, beginning with Alan Costantini.
It was Thursday night when Olmsted County Sheriff's deputies found the bodies of 4 members of the Brom family in their Cascade, Minnesota home. Bernard and Paulette Brom and 2 of their children, 14-year-old Diane and 9-year-old Rick, had been murdered with an axe. Today, Olmsted County authorities charged 16-year-old David Brom with 4 counts of first-degree murder. First degree because they have witnesses who say the high school sophomore planned the killings of his family.
I think there were 2 subjects mentioned in the complaint indicating that he talked about killing his parents, or that he had killed them, and his brother and sister.
Still, authorities say they have no motive and mental tests have been ordered.
We're asking that there be a psychiatric evaluation, yes. And we're meeting with the judge on Monday afternoon to discuss who might do that and obtain that order. The defense is joining in that request.
The question Olmsted County authorities must decide now is whether to charge David Brom as a juvenile or as an adult. As a juvenile, if convicted, he would face less than 3 years in confinement. As an adult, he could get life. All of Rochester is in shock over the killings. John Stone has that story.
These are David Brom's Lourdes High School classmates praying at a special mass at St. John's Church, sharing one student's bewilderment that her classmate is suspected of murder.
I feel sorry for everyone, and I basically think that everyone just hurts.
Well, this is obviously the shock phase. It's beginning to set in. There is, in several cases, extreme grief.
The shock has spread well beyond Lourdes High School, beyond St. Pius Elementary, where David's brother and sister went to school before they were killed. All of Rochester is in disbelief.
It's just, a shock to the whole community. Everyone's talking about it, wondering why.
David is described as well-behaved and polite, the boy who'd shovel his neighbor's snow for free, who'd sit in the front row of Father Jack Kroge's religion class.
David appeared to be happy, interested.
Lourdes High and St. Pius School remained open today, but much of the community went to church, where clergy helped them deal with the murders. But Lourdes Principal Leahy says at his school, that process could take months. John Stone, News 11, Rochester.
27-year-old Angeli Dominguez was originally from New Jersey. She was living in Jacksonville, Florida with her fiancé, Tony Miranda. The couple is expecting their first child, a girl, in July. 21-year-old Angeli Dominguez was Angeli's little sister. She lived in the family home in Little Ferry, New Jersey, with the siblings' mother, Juana Dominguez, and their teenage brother. Angeli Dominguez was described as a scholar. She always had good grades and goals for her future. She was immensely caring. She was a graduate of Union City High School and was a student at William Patterson University, where she was pursuing a nursing degree. Angeli was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. On Friday, March 18, 2022, Angeli was taken to the hospital under the Florida's Baker Act, which allows involuntary institutionalization and examination of a person. What I know is a 5150, and what others may know is something else. She was released from the hospital the following day, on Saturday, March 19th, 2022. Monday, March 21st, 2022. Angeli steals her fiancé's 1995 Ford Mustang, loaded with 5 guns. Let me just say in advance that Angeli's fiancé did nothing wrong in this situation, and if anything, he was extremely proactive and tried to stop anything from happening by informing not only Jacksonville police, but also New Jersey's police. Jacksonville officers told Tony that because Angeli was his fiancé, and because they had been together for 3 years, and because she was pregnant with his child, she had the right to borrow his items, and they couldn't file it as stolen items. Rather, it was filed as a civil matter.
Newly released Jacksonville police body cam video shows Tony Miranda explaining to them that his mentally unstable fiancée, 27-year-old Angeli Dominguez, had stolen his car and was headed to New Jersey. His car had multiple guns inside that he legally owns. Police in New Jersey say the following day, Dominguez shot and killed her sister.
This dash cam video shows the interaction between Miranda and the officer. It happened last Monday here at the Staple Suites Motel on Jacksonville's west side.
You the one that called?
Yes, sir.
What's going on?
So, my girlfriend was Baker acted Friday. She was released Saturday. Today is now Monday. She flipped the script on me again. She stole the car and took off toward Jersey.
Moments later, Miranda gives the officer a real-time location of the car that he is reporting stolen.
The only thing I know is she's in South Carolina because the T-Mobile does the tracking, and she's driving 95 on in South Carolina to get...
Going back to New Jersey?
Then he tells the officer...
there is firearms in the car because I'm a legal holder, but I just don't have my concealed carry.
So at this point, the officer has been told that a mentally unstable woman has taken her fiancé's car without his permission, and she appears to be headed to New Jersey, where she is from, and the car has multiple firearms inside. We don't see the officer attempting to call authorities out of state, but we do hear the officer explain why he can't write up a stolen car report.
Because you guys are in a relationship, it's kind of one of those things. Your stuff is her stuff is your stuff. Legally, I can't claim it as, I can't write it up as being stolen.
Angeli then drives 13 hours to Little Ferry, New Jersey, to the home of her mother and siblings. Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022. Angeli and O'Malley's teenage brother comes home from school a little after 3 p.m. and sees his 2 sisters talking in the home. He says that he then hears his 2 sisters start arguing about money, and then hears a gunshot. He ran into the living room and found his sister O'Malley slumped over the couch with a gunshot wound between her eyes. Angeli and the teen locked eyes for a few moments before she fled the home. The teen called 911, but it was too late. His sister was gone. Officers would find and arrest Angeli not far from the home on the New Jersey Turnpike on her way back to Florida. She was arrested and she's currently being held in the Bergen County Jail. It's awful. It's just awful. What do you guys think of this one? Are the officers responsible for not taking the fiancé's claims more seriously? And could this have been prevented if they did? Let me know what you think about this one. I'm really curious to hear what you guys are thinking. So let me know in the comments down below.
Is behind bars in New Jersey, accused of driving nearly 1,000 miles and killing her younger sister. Police say 27-year-old Angeli Dominguez is facing murder and other charges. Now, the News 4 Jax I team has discovered her fiancé in Jacksonville reported to police that she was armed and mentally unstable, but he says they did not intervene. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is now investigating because of our story. News 4 Jax I team investigator Vic Michelucci spoke with the man.
He says this was preventable. The accused killer's fiancé tells me that he called police both here in Jacksonville and in New Jersey to warn them that she had his car and a number of his guns. He was even tracking her on GPS.
That's when I first called. Monday. Date and time from incident. Date and time reported.
Tony Miranda shows us the police reports proving he warned officers about his fiancée Angeli Dominguez. What did police tell you here in Jacksonville when you said, hey, she's got my car, she's got my guns?
They told me because she's my girlfriend and you guys been together for 3 years roughly, and she is pregnant with your child, that it's not necessarily stealing the items because she could come back. I'm like, she's in South Carolina.
Despite Miranda insisting she stole his car and firearms, the I-Team found records showing the officer in Jacksonville wrote the case was civil, not criminal. Miranda was tracking her on GPS all the way to New Jersey, where her family is. But he says officers there didn't take it seriously either, until 7 hours later, when prosecutors say she shot and killed her 21-year-old sister, Angeli Dominguez, in the town of Little Ferry.
It's devastating that she took her sister's life. She took her sister's life using something that I feel really could have been prevented had they stopped her when I called to report all this stolen, and they see that she's mentally unstable even from this Baker Act.
JSO records show that Dominguez was Baker Acted last Friday, but was cleared and released the next day, on Saturday. Her fiancé reported that she took off on Monday. The homicide happened on Tuesday. Hours later, state police arrested her on the turnpike on her way back to Florida.
I tried getting it stopped.
The I-Team brought his complaints to JSO, and now the Sheriff's Administration has launched an internal investigation. A spokesperson telling us they're pulling the body camera from the calls and reviewing how officers handled the case. They point out that under Florida law, a common law spouse can take a vehicle and belongings. And this was not the first domestic dispute between the couple.
This law out here needs to change.
How so?
If something's reported stolen, whether it be family, friend, even if they have access to said items, if somebody's reporting something stolen, don't take it lightly. Who knows what can be done? Who knows what can happen?
And tonight, Dominguez is in jail in New Jersey. Her next court hearing is March the 28th, 4 days from now. She is expected to give birth sometime in July. I'm Vic Michelucci, Channel 4, the local station.
31-year-old Henry Chau from Hong Kong was a pianist. He was also a self-proclaimed psychopath who makes no apologies for his actions. Henry had one sibling, an older brother. He claimed that his father was arrogant, never gave him a moment's peace, and would not lower the television volume when he was trying to study as a student. He was also angry at his mother for looking at him sadly when he didn't contribute to the family, and for humiliating him on his 24th birthday in front of the girl he loved. Going on to say, "I thought that if I could resolve the emotional connection with my parents, it would be a solution. If they died, I could be reborn." He also claimed that his father would abuse his brother, which would prompt his brother to abuse him. March 1st, 2013, Henry Chau invites his parents over to his new apartment. He then tells them he wants to show them his new place and cook them dinner. As soon as the parents entered, Henry Chau and his accomplice, who was waiting inside, attacked Chau's parents. The accomplice was able to take out the mother, but Henry failed to provide a fatal first blow to his father. They ended up in a struggle, and Henry Chau sliced his hand open, a wound he would later receive care for at the hospital, but not before he sliced his father's neck open, killing him. While Chau was at the hospital caring for his wounds, his accomplice was cutting up the bodies and boiling them. The heads of 65-year-old Chau Wing and his wife, 62-year-old Moon Soo, were found in 2 separate refrigerators. Other remains were found in lunchboxes packed with rice, including minced flesh, hearts, liver, sexual organs, etc. There were microwaves with a yellow oily residue that was believed to be human fat. Investigators also found bags that contained 2 left hands, 1 right hand, 1 left leg, 1 right leg, and minced flesh treated with salt. A second bag contained 1 right leg and minced flesh. And a third bag contained 1 left leg and minced flesh. On March 12, 2013, 5 days after filing a missing persons report, the 2 Chau brothers heard from police that there were no departure records for their parents. March 13, 2013, Henry Chau and his older brother claimed that they had not heard from their parents since March 2nd. Chau stated that before their disappearance, his parents had informed them that they were planning to travel to mainland China. March 14, 2013, Henry Chau was invited to the police station for further questioning about his missing parents. During the police interview, Chau texted his friends in a WhatsApp group and confessed to the crime. He even described the details and reasons for the murder. March 15, 2013, a day after the interview, Chau and his friend were indicted for killing and dismembering Chau's parents in their flat in Long Beach building. According to reports, during further interrogation and investigation, Chau claimed that he and C coordinated the attack the moment his mother and father arrived in the living room because this was the time when they felt ready. He described his accomplice as a very powerful man who covered his mother's mouth from behind while slashing her throat. Henry Chau then admitted to stabbing his father in the back of the neck, but stated that his accomplice had finished the job by slashing his throat. The autopsy report further confirmed the cause of death. 4 days after the incident, Henry Chau returned to the flat where his accomplice had already had all the body parts dismembered, salted, refrigerated, and demoisturized. Chau describes his role in the double murder as killing only, while his accomplice dismembered the bodies. On March 9, 2015, Chau's defense lawyer, Nicholas Adams, called psychiatrist Chung Kai-Fai to the stand. He had diagnosed Chau with bipolar disorder and obsessive-compulsive disorder, and stated that Chau had experienced many suicidal thoughts after dropping out of college, being rejected by women, and being unemployed, giving a possible psychological trigger for the murder. A consultant at the Psychiatric Center of Sulam conducted an IQ test and found Henry Chau's IQ to be 126 higher than average, while his accomplice's IQ is 84. He argued the possibility that Chau, having such a higher IQ than his accomplice, could have manipulated and framed him for the murder. On March 20th, 2015, the verdict was passed. The court found Henry Chau guilty of the double murder, while finding his accomplice not guilty on both counts of murder. Chau was sentenced to life in prison, while his accomplice was sentenced to 1 year for preventing the lawful burial of the bodies. As his accomplice had already been detained for 2 years on remand, he was released immediately. 30-year-old Nina Holbrook from Centerville, Indiana, was the daughter of 50-year-old Carl Holbrook. Carl had been arrested in 1995 and in 2007 for SA crimes. On July 8, 2011, Nina was in her bedroom when she called for her father to come upstairs. She poured gasoline into a cup. When Carl came into her room, she threw the gasoline on him and lit him on fire with a candle. She then crawled out of her window and walked down the road. That's where she ran into her uncle, Harvey Holbrook. She told her uncle what she had done and that her intention was for the father to die. Harvey called police, and when they arrived at the home, Carl was very badly burned and unable to speak. He was airlifted to a hospital but would die shortly after. When investigators asked Nina what happened, she told them, "I torched him." When they asked again, she said, "I set my dad on fire." Nina agreed to a plea deal for 55 years in prison for the murder and 50 years in prison for the arson to run concurrently. Tyler Blansit was a 22-year-old biology student at the University of Alabama in 2015. He was the only child of 45-year-old Sherry Ann Blansit and Stacy Blansit. On May 29, 2015, Tyler was home from college after the spring semester had concluded. Sherry and Tyler were in the backyard when she confronted her son over his bad grades, and a heated argument ensued. Tyler then hit his mother with a baseball bat, killing her. His father, Stacy, was at work during the attack. Tyler originally told officers that he and his mother were attacked. That's why he has scratches on his face and a knot on his forehead. It didn't take long for police to call bullshit, and after a very long interrogation, Tyler finally confessed to being the person that delivered the blows with the bat. Blansit was sentenced to 25 years in prison with the eligibility for parole after 15 years.
A college student charged with killing his mom in an argument over grades has been placed on a $500,000 bond. Mentone resident Tyler Ryan Blansit attended the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Authorities say the 22-year-old beat his mother in the face with a baseball bat until she was unrecognizable. Police found the body of Sherry Ann Blansit in the backyard. DeKalb County Sheriff Jimmy Harris says it's one of the most brutal deaths he's ever seen.
47-year-old Mary Jo Hadley and 54-year-old Blake Hadley lived in Port St. Lucie, Florida for the past 24 years leading up to their murders. They had 2 children together, Ryan and Tyler. Mary Jo was an elementary school teacher for 24 years, and Blake worked as a plant operator for Florida Power and Light for 30 years. Port St. Lucie is not geared for teens. There's really nothing to do there, and teens are constantly complaining about how boring it is. Surprisingly, though, for a town without any rough neighborhoods, there's actually a lot of crime there, and the majority of the crime is committed by teens. Probably because they're bored, I guess. In 2011, 17-year-old Tyler Hadley attended Port St. Lucie High School. He wasn't a very popular kid at all, and got into a lot of trouble during his teenage years. He began skipping school, taking drugs, and had mental health issues. But his parents were on top of it, and they sent him to an outpatient mental health program and substance abuse program. In July of 2011, Tyler began telling friends that he was going to be having a house party because his parents would be out of town. Friends found this hard to believe because he had never thrown a party before and because his parents had become very strict with him due to all his screw-ups. On a Friday night in June, Tyler came home extremely intoxicated after urinating on his friend's bed. Classy. That's when Mary Jo admitted Tyler into New Horizons Treatment Center. He received counseling in the past for depression and eating disorder and low self-esteem. And it's even said that Mary Jo allowed Tyler to take growth hormone injections in his early adolescence to help boost his confidence, claiming the reason for this being that she did not want her son to be teased for being short and chubby. And I get that, I do get that in a way, but that's probably not the approach to take. Like, maybe diet and exercise should have came first before growth hormone injections on such a young kid. No offense to her. I think that by all accounts she was an excellent mother. I don't agree with that part of it. Anyway, weeks before the party, Mary Jo told friends that Tyler was over the hurdle and that she was so happy about his improvement. The weekend before the party, Tyler, his father, and his grandfather went to Georgia for a family reunion, where everybody says that everything looked perfectly normal and happy. The night before the party, the Hadleys all went out to dinner as a family, and they even ran into one of Tyler's friends that night who said the family looked very happy together. Tyler told him that it was his birthday and that he was going to be having a big party to celebrate. And again, even though his friends did not believe this party was going to happen, he was adamant about it happening. Saturday, July 16th, 2011, Tyler has a conversation with his friend Antonio Ramirez via Facebook Messenger, telling him that the party was on for that evening. At 1:15 p.m., Tyler posted to his Facebook wall, "Party at my crib tonight, maybe." At 8:15 p.m., he posted, "Party at my house, hit me up." His friend Ashley messaged him saying, "Whoa, what? What if your parents come home?" To which Tyler replies, "They won't, trust me." At around 11:30, the popular athletic junior Mike Young arrived with 10 of his friends. He had only known Tyler by sight, but since it was such a boring town, they decided to go to this party, which is what a lot of kids did because the majority of the guests at this party did not know Tyler. Before long, there were 60 kids in Tyler's home, and most of them had no idea who he was. They laid all over the couches, played beer pong on the dining room table, scrounged for food in the kitchen, tossed beer cans on the lawn, and put cigarettes out on the rugs. 17-year-old Jose was playing beer pong when he heard someone say that Tyler killed his parents. But then everybody laughed, so he blew off the statement and kept playing. People kept asking Tyler where his parents were. He told Mark Andrews that they were in Georgia. He told Ryan Stonesifer that they were in Orlando. And he told Richard Waters that they didn't live there, that this was his house. Mark Andrews met Tyler 11 years ago when his family moved to Port St. Lucie. When Tyler was 10, he showed up at the Andrews house after a fight with his mom and vowed that he would kill his parents. Mark told Tyler that all parents piss off their kids, and Tyler, calming down, agreed, and they ended up laughing about it. Tyler's friend Marky Phillips missed the party because he was visiting his grandparents that weekend, but had hung out with Tyler 2 nights prior. They were playing video games and watching television. He says that Tyler seemed pretty fine that night, but 2 weeks before that, when they were hanging out at Marky's house, Tyler blurted out in the middle of a conversation that he wanted to kill his parents and have a big party after, saying nobody had ever done that before. Throw a huge party with the bodies still in the house. To which Marky replied, that's crazy, and just figured that Tyler was trying to make a joke. Nobody ever took Tyler seriously when he talked about killing his parents, because he did it all the time. In a Facebook chat with his friend Mercedes Marco on July 2nd, 2 weeks before the party, he complained that his mother had confiscated his phone, telling her, yep, she's a see you next Tuesday for sure. I might kill her. To which Mercedes responds, oh my God, no jail, or I mean prison, LOL. To which Tyler responds, oh well. By midnight, there were about 100 teens in the Hadley home, along with 2 dogs, a black lab named Sophie and a beagle. Tyler's older brother Ryan had moved out of the home and to North Carolina 6 weeks prior to this to attend college. And even though the party was only several hours old, the rooms were trashed. At 12:30, Tyler goes for a beer run with Mark Andrews and his girlfriend Ashley. While Mark was in the store and Tyler and Ashley were waiting for him in the car, Tyler told Ashley that his dad had died. Because Ashley didn't really know Tyler that well, she just assumed that he meant that his father died a long time ago, but she decided not to pry. At around 12:45 a.m., a teen named Anthony Snook arrived. At some point, Snook noticed that the door to the master bedroom was locked. He assumed there were people in the room, but when he tried to get in, he couldn't. He knelt down to look under the door and saw a black smear about a foot long and smelled a foul odor, describing it as looking like oil-based paint that someone unsuccessfully tried to wipe away. At around 1:15 a.m., a kid named Justin Wright arrived. He recalled that there was a foul stench in the home, like sweaty clothes that had been laying out for a long period of time. During a game of beer pong, Justin bent down to pick up the ball. That's when he noticed a thick brown substance. Mildly grossed out, he rinsed off the ball and he continued playing. As Tyler's best friend, Mark Andrews, was leaving the party, Tyler asked if he could speak to him privately. Once everybody else was inside, Tyler turned to Mark and said, dude, I did some things. I might go to prison. I might go away for life. I don't know, dude. I'm freaking out right now. To which Mark responds, what are you talking about? Tyler says, dude, I know you're not going to believe me. No one will believe me. I freaking killed somebody. Dude, you're killing somebody is your own business, Mark says. Don't be telling me that sort of thing. I don't need to know. Tyler goes back into the house and he runs into a kid named Ricardo that he had met that night. To which Ricardo says, thanks for having us over and thanks for the beer. Tyler says to Ricardo, I just wanted to do something fun before I left. Where are you going? To which Tyler says, I'm going to off myself because I did something really bad. To which Ricardo responds, what did you do? It can't be that bad. Don't worry, says Tyler. If I get caught, I'll be in jail for a long time. Tyler goes into his bedroom and he finds his friend Kimberly. They had been close friends for a really long time. Tyler tells Kimberly, I'm going away for 60 years. To which Kimberly asks why, and Tyler tells her that she will find out tomorrow. At around 1 a.m., Tyler asks his friend Michael Mandel to walk outside with him so that they could speak privately. Tyler and Michael had been best friends since they were 8 years old, and they were hanging out for much of the party that evening. They walked to a stop sign at the end of the block, and when they got there, Tyler turned around to Michael and said, I killed my parents. To which Michael responds, yeah, right. Tyler says, Michael, I'm being real. I'm not lying to you. If you look closely enough, you can see signs. He told Michael to look in the driveway. Michael saw the 2 cars closest to the garage were a black Toyota Tacoma that belonged to Tyler's father and his mother's red Ford Expedition. If Tyler's parents weren't home, why were their cars there? Okay. I mean, I guess that doesn't prove that, but it raises suspicions. Michael still doesn't believe this, so Tyler tells him to look inside the garage. After making sure that nobody was watching, Michael slipped into the garage and turned on the light, where he saw a bloody shoe print and immediately retreated, shutting the door behind him. Tyler then leads Michael to the master bedroom, where he sees traces of blood on the door. Tyler unlocks the door and opens it. Michael sees dining room chairs and blood-soaked towels stacked in a huge pile. At the bottom of the pile, emerging from the debris, is a thick, white leg. Tyler told Michael what happened. That afternoon, shortly before 5 o'clock, Tyler had hid his parents' cell phones so that they could not call for help. He listened to a song called Feel Lucky with lyrics like, "Come on, I feel lucky." Well, I woke up this morning, stumbled out of my rack. I opened up the paper to the page in the back. It only took a minute for my finger to find my daily dose of destiny under my sign. My eyes just about popped out of my head. It said, "The stars are stacked against you, girl. Get back in bed." I feel lucky. No Professor Doom's gonna stand in my way. I feel lucky today. Well, I strolled down the corner, gave my numbers to the clerk. The pot's 11 million, so I called in sick to work. I bought a pack of Camels, a burrito, and a Barks, crossed against the light, made a beeline for the park. The sky began to thunder, the wind began to moan. I heard a voice above me saying, "Girl, you better get back home." But I feel lucky. No tropical depression's gonna steal my son away. I feel lucky today. He then took 3 pills of ecstasy because he worried that he couldn't kill his parents while sober. In the garage, he found a claw hammer. Then he returned to the house. He stood behind his mother while she worked at the family computer. For a full 5 minutes, he stood there, thinking about what he was about to do. Then he raised the claw end of the hammer and brought it down on Mary Jo's head. "Why?" she screams. "Why?" Hearing his wife's screams, Blake Hadley ran out of the master bedroom. He was a big man, 6'1", 300 pounds, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to see. Father and son lock eyes for several minutes. "Why?" asks Blake Hadley. "Why the F not?" shouts Tyler. He kept repeating this question while he beat his father to death with the claw end of the hammer. When it was over, there were multiple blunt trauma injuries present on Blake Hadley's body. His nose was broken at the base, and he had suffered multiple abrasions and contusions to his face. Tyler had smashed his skull in several spots, and these fractures were visible through his skin. His right temporal lobe, the part of the brain that controls hearing, had multiple lacerations, and the brain itself was floating in blood. Swelled up from the repeated hammer strikes to the skull. Blake's legs were also broken, and each fibula shattered in pieces. The medical examiner counted at least 65 blunt trauma injuries, including massive skull fractures. Mary Jo Hadley's autopsy was equally horrific. Her son hit her so much and with so much force in the back of the head that her spine fractured, possibly from her back hyperextending during the attack. Mary Jo suffered 7 broken ribs, which punctured her left lung, extensive injuries visible to her brain via the claw end of the hammer, 14 wounds across her back, and lacerations of all sizes on her face and neck. Even worse, the whole thing is just awful. But the medical examiner describes Mary Jo's skull as pulverized. Her son pulverized her skull. The top of the head was cut so badly that the skull was clearly visible, or what was left of the skull was visible, according to the medical examiner. Mary Jo's skull was smashed like an egg.
I know he loved his parents, and I know his parents loved him. They dedicated their lives to Tyler.
Raw emotion from the uncle of Tyler Hadley. Michael Hadley says he will not forgive his nephew, at least not now. Tyler Hadley will be sentenced for the killings of his parents next month. Dan Corcoran has been covering this story since the day it broke, and he's been in Port St. Lucie with an interview that you'll see only on 5, Dan.
Well, Kelly, Michael Hadley has not spoken out very much about his nephew or about the murders of his brother and his sister-in-law. Tonight, though, he was ready to open up.
Nearly 3 years later, and it doesn't get any easier for Tyler Hadley's uncle, Michael.
We lost 3 people that day. Okay, we lost Tyler, Blake and Mary Jo.
Just 3 days before Tyler Hadley's parents were found murdered in their Port St. Lucie home, and before Tyler was arrested, the family was together at Michael's cabin in the northern Georgia mountains. Michael says there was no sign then of what was about to happen.
There was moments that he looked like he might be, somewhat sad or thinking about something a little, out there, but perfectly normal for a 17-year-old.
And that was the last time Michael saw his nephew until this week, when now 20-year-old Tyler appeared in court to plead no contest to the first-degree murders of his parents.
He showed no emotion, none whatsoever. He stared straight ahead. I don't think he does have any remorse.
The case has shaken and even divided the Hadley family. Some have visited Tyler in jail, others just can't.
How can I go see him? How could I do that? It breaks my heart. It really does. I love the kid, But he took away my best friend, my confidant, my brother, and how can you sit down and have a normal conversation with somebody that have robbed you something so precious?
And though there won't be a trial, there's sure to be heartache at sentencing. Michael hopes it brings closure. He says his brother would want the family to start moving forward.
Live life the best you can. And that's what my brother's telling me. Don't give up. Keep going. Life is worth it.
And as for what Michael Hadley believes his nephew's sentence should be, life in prison without any possibility of parole. Sentencing begins March 10th and could last into a second week. I'm Dan Corcoran, WPTV News Channel 5.
While most of the 40 or so people here Saturday night were having a good time, Tyler Hadley shared a dark secret with his best friend. That friend told us that Hadley planned to kill himself if and when police discovered a gruesome crime scene in his parents' bedroom. Tyler Hadley and Michael Mandel took this picture Saturday night. It was the last picture Mandel thought he'd ever take with his best friend. Mandel says Hadley had just made an unbelievable confession that he'd killed his parents.
After he told me, I didn't believe him because he's been my best friend forever. I would never suspect anything like this. And I was looking around. He told me if I look at enough, I can see signs. I looked on the floor, I could see signs of blood. And that's when I went around back and looked in his parents' bedroom.
Hadley went before a judge this morning, facing 2 counts of second-degree murder. Chief Assistant State Attorney Tom Bakadal says he will seek even tougher charges for the deaths of Blake and Mary Jo Hadley.
We, in fact, plan and fully anticipate at this point in time, we will take the case to the grand jury and we will seek an indictment for first-degree murder.
Tyler Hadley is a few months shy of his 18th birthday, so he is not eligible for the death penalty. He does face life in prison if convicted for murdering his parents. It's something Michael Mandel still can't comprehend, even after seeing it with his own eyes.
I saw bloody sheets piled everywhere. I saw broken pictures with blood on them, and I looked down and I saw his dad's leg.
Mandel says the two have been friends for years, though Hadley started getting into trouble around the age of 15. He says Hadley complained of arguing with his parents and claimed that rap music and his parents' financial troubles influenced his actions. And Mandel says Hadley took ecstasy on the day of the killings. Mandel wanted one last picture with his longtime friend.
After I found his parents, I knew it was going to be the last time I seen him. This is that look on his face. You could see the horror in his face. That's not normal Tyler.
Tyler Hadley now has a public defender representing him. That attorney tells us that he will enter a not guilty plea on Tyler's behalf.
Tonight, you get to hear what an anonymous tipster told police that alerted them that they needed to go to the house on the 300 block of Northeast Granger Avenue in Port St. Lucie right away. A tipster who claimed he attended the party that 17-year-old Tyler Hadley hosted in his parents' home after allegedly killing them last month made a call to police. The caller said a mutual friend told him Hadley had just confessed to the crime.
He told me that the kid Tyler up, and he was like, he told me that, like, the gist of it, that he did something to his parents. And I was like, bro, I don't want to know any details.
Okay, did he say, like, specific, like, did he hurt them? Are they still alive?
Like, no, like, my understanding of it was that he killed them.
Listen to how shaken and concerned the caller seems.
His parents are supposed, like, the bodies are supposed to be at his house, apparently. That's my understanding of it. It all got jumbled up. I mean, like, I'm really, like, scared, like, confused, you know?
But that wasn't the only call police got. The state attorney's office confirms that someone else called Crime Line in Orlando to report the Port St. Lucie crime. This is the Orlando call center reporting it to local authorities.
He's claiming that he killed his parents at about 5 o'clock last night. I guess they're constantly fighting, and they are supposed to be in their bedroom.
Back to the party goer we heard from on the 911 audio recordings. Listen to his tone.
I don't think anyone would be this serious about take it this far. So I don't think it's a joke. And, like, I don't know. I think he really needs help.
The state attorney continues to pore over this evidence as Tyler Hadley remains in jail.
Officers were dispatched to the Hadley home at about 4:32 a.m. As they walked up the driveway, they heard someone inside talking. Officer Green saw through the front bay window the shadow of a person walking back and forth. He knelt down by the window and peered through the blinds. Tyler was pacing across the living room floor talking to himself with a very disturbing look on his face. His eyes were very wide and not blinking. Tyler then grabs a stack of books from a bookshelf near the front door, marches them to a back bedroom. After saying something that he couldn't understand, he dumps the books on the floor. Tyler would go on to repeat this 2 more times. Finally, Officer Green decides to knock on the front door and ring the bell. There's no answer, but he could see Hadley through the window, walking away from the door, which I don't know why he thought that not answering the door was going to do anything, but I don't know why he thought that he could kill his parents and throw a party and not get caught. So, there's that. The rest of the lights in the house get turned off. Then Hadley decides to open the door. They order him to the floor and they cuff him, to which Tyler replies, "I know I'm going to Rock Road," which is the address of the St. Lucie County Jail. "So just take me." As Tyler's being led down his driveway with handcuffs on, he sees officers entering the home. Tyler then shouts, "You can't go in there. Don't go in there." Okay. They see empty beer bottles and red plastic Solo cups everywhere. On the counters, the floors, there's pots and pans on the kitchen counter. Tyler's bedroom floor is riddled with cigarettes. His bed had about 15 empty beer cans, a woman's purse. There's furniture in his brother's old bedroom turned over. The floor's covered with clothes and bedding. And then locked inside the closet, they found Sophie, the black lab. The beagle was actually hiding in the bathtub, petrified also. Terrible. The cops passed through the kitchen and approached the master bedroom. It's locked. They noticed streaks of dry blood on the frame and the baseboards. They forced the knob and they opened the door. And they see everything. While searching the house, cops find prescription bottles with Tyler's name for hydroxyzine, which is a relatively mild anti-anxiety medication, as well as an antidepressant that can increase the risk of suicide in young teens. In a letter from jail to his grandparents, Tyler blames the pills, writing, "I wish I never started taking that damn pill. None of this would ever have happened." In a letter to his friend, he says, "I regret everything I did. I swear it's those drugs, man." Which, granted, they could have played a role. But I also think that your selfishness and your greed played a bigger role. Personally, in my opinion. But Tyler tells his friend Michael that he purposefully waited for his brother to move out before he killed his parents. Tyler Hadley was sentenced to life in prison. But then he actually filed for an appeal because that law was passed in Florida as well. Because I think it's like 36 other states that you can't sentence a minor to life in prison because their brains are not fully developed yet and it's considered unconstitutional. So his lawyers file an appeal and he goes back to court, dragging this family through this mess all over again. But thankfully, the judge decides to uphold the life in prison without the possibility of parole conviction.
Ryan have taken the stand to talk about Tyler's feelings toward his parents before they were killed.
Last month, Hadley pled no contest to 2 counts of first-degree murder. Covering the Treasure Coast right now with the largest news team, John Shaman, live outside the St. Lucie County Courthouse with a breakdown of what's happened so far in court. John?
In its opening statements, the prosecution said the killing of Blake and Mary Jo Hadley was a cold, calculated, premeditated act. The defense did not offer any opening, so the prosecution then began calling witnesses. And the first witness they called to the stand was the brother, the older brother of Tyler Hadley, Ryan Hadley, and by far that has been the most dramatic testimony so far. Let's show you the pictures from inside the courtroom up at 3B. Ryan Hadley, the older brother by 6 years, he was on the stand for nearly an hour and said he and his brother were very close growing up. Ryan Hadley, though, did say as Tyler got older, he would steal his parents' debit card and at times take his father's truck keys without permission. At the end of his testimony, Ryan Hadley was asked what he wants to see happen to his brother.
Well, I guess what I want is for him to get the maximum penalty possible, which I understand is life in prison without parole.
Now, the state also called Mary Jo Hadley's niece, who said Tyler Hadley looked fine at a family dinner the night before the murders. The next 2 witnesses to the stand were acquaintances of Tyler Hadley. The first, a friend who said Hadley complained about his parents, the fact that he was in rehab and that he could not go out. Testimony still underway as we speak right now. One of the investigators for the Port St. Lucie Police Department on the stand. The state looking for the judge to issue the maximum penalty of 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Because Hadley was 17 when his parents were killed, he is ineligible for the death penalty.
Tyler Hadley walked into Judge Gary Sweet's courtroom Thursday morning, staring straight ahead, never looking at members of his family who were sitting in the front row. This is the second time he's appeared for a sentencing hearing. The first time was back in 2014, when he pleaded no contest for murdering his parents with a hammer in their Port St. Lucie home and then hosting a party with their bodies still inside the house. He was 17 at the time and was sentenced to life in prison, but it was overturned on appeal because of a new national guideline for juveniles.
Bruises, lacerations inside the mouth.
In court, Judge Sweet listened to more than a week of testimony from experts who said Hadley was capable of rehabilitation. Hadley even apologized. But prosecutors and family members testified the troubled youth understood his actions and should stay in prison. And after listening to the judge read from his resentencing order in court, it was clear he agreed with the state.
Evidence of Hadley's youth, maturity, and mental health are not sufficiently persuasive to mitigate the severity of his crimes. The appropriate sentence for Hadley is life for the murders of his parents.
I thought the judge's decision was the correct one and the only one that he could make based on all the evidence. Now we can go on and celebrate their life and and try to think of the good, happy times and move on.
Today, the hammer of justice falls upon Tyler Hadley, and I think that sums it up. I've said this for the last 8 years. If Tyler Hadley doesn't deserve life in prison, then no one does.
Documents came from the state attorney's office, but these might be among the most important of them. This is a transcript of the interview with another inmate who says Tyler Hadley talked to him in detail about the crime and likes to refer to himself as Hammer Boy. Now let's take a look at Tyler Hadley. He was 17, you may recall, when he was arrested. He's 18 now and is in the St. Lucie County Jail awaiting trial. Hadley is accused of killing his parents inside their home in July of 2011. Police say he used a hammer to beat both his mother and father to death. Investigators say he then threw a party in the house while his parents' bodies were in another room. In the documents released today, another inmate, Justin Toney, says Hadley signs autographs for other inmates and writes, "It's hammer time." He's known in the jail as Hammer or Hambo or Bam Bam. And here is a direct quote from the transcript. Toney says he asked Hadley why he killed his parents. Quote, he's like, it was the devil, because the devil's drugs and money. That was his exact words. The devil is drugs and money, unquote. Tony says he doesn't know what Hadley meant by that. Another thing in the transcript is Tony says, despite bragging about the crime, that Hadley often expresses remorse towards his mother and father, saying that as he was killing them, he knew that they loved him. We'll have more on this coming up, all new at 6 o'clock. For now, live in the newsroom, Kathleen O'Toole, WPBF 20.
The area's grisliest crimes was committed. Tyler Hadley is in prison for killing his parents with a hammer in their Port St. Lucie home. Megan McRoberts is live outside the former home where she's just learned what will become of this property. Megan?
And Kelly, we've spoken with several neighbors today who say they think this demolition is what is needed for this home, knowing about those brutal murders that happened here. Now, once this demolition is complete, the bank that owns this, Wells Fargo, has plans to donate the property to the city. Once the city has the property, the bank says there are endless options for what the city can do with it. The bank says when they've done this with other properties in the past, cities can turn it into a green space or a park. The city could also build another home to donate or even just give the land to another charitable organization. Plenty of options. The bank says because of the sensitive background of this home, they thought this was the best idea, and some neighbors agree.
I hope it heals and the curiosity will go away. For a long time, we've spent time with people just coming through to look. You know, that's the house where it happened, you know. So maybe that will stop and maybe the trick-or-treaters will come back.
The bank did have this home for sale last year. They even completed some renovations inside of it, but no word yet on when the land will be donated to the city. These crews will be out here, they say, for at least another week.
62-year-old Janice Dundas was a retired mental health nurse. She was described as generous, gregarious, and canny, a person who lived in the moment and refused to ever see the bad in people. In her mind, no bridge was ever too broken to mend. 21-year-old Jack Huxley was Janice's step-grandson. He was described as very immature. He would engage in self-inflicted harm and punch walls out of anger, but had never physically harmed another person. He had a troubled past that involved alcohol and drug abuse, behavioral problems, and depression. His problems became so bad that his mother no longer allowed him to live in her home. April 4th, 2013. Janice agrees to let her step-grandson Jack stay at her home after he shows up on her doorstep homeless. April 5th, 2013. Police respond to a car crash. The person behind the wheel was a very intoxicated Jack Huxley. The owner of the car was Janice Dundas. Police originally arrested Huxley for driving under the influence. It wasn't until police went to Janice's flat that he would be rearrested for murder. When officers arrived at the flat, they found Janice laying on the floor with 4 knives sticking out of her back. On April 4th, Janice was sleeping in her bed, and Jack was watching Granny Porn, drinking vodka, smoking, and taking pills. He then went into Janice's room with 3 knives and a fork. He stabbed and mutilated her body before and after death. The courts have no proof that actual penetration had taken place, but Huxley's boxers were found under her body, and his shirt was found in her bed. After the murder, he watched more Porn with young men and older women on his laptop and on Janice's computer. He attempted to clean up a little, stole Janice's credit cards, cell phone, and cash before leaving in her car and crashing it. Huxley changed his story several times, saying that it was a masked intruder, then saying it was self-defense, before actually admitting to the murder. On October 3rd, 2013, Huxley was sentenced to 21 years in prison, a term that will end on October 3rd, 2034, when he's 42 years of age. After the trial, one of Janice's daughters spoke outside of the courthouse.
Our mummy, a grandmother, sister and daughter. A clever and insightful woman, murdered so brutally by a man she invited into her home. Her murder has left a deep and dark hole in our lives. The sentence imposed in some ways reflects the gravity of this crime and gives us some consolation. We would like to thank the many people who have worked so tirelessly to achieve justice for Mummy. We are extremely grateful to all concerned. Our wonderful life has been shattered, and all we can now do is try to not to let the incomprehensible actions of one man become our focus. Instead, we will try to rejoice in the memories we have of a truly wonderful woman, our beautiful mummy.
Erica Hall was born on September 30th, 1986. At the time of her death in 2019, she was a mother of 4 girls, aged 16, 14, 12, and 1. She worked at Sanderson Farms, and the family resided in Mississippi. Friday, January 4th, 2019, 2 of Erica's daughters, 14-year-olds Mariana Hall and her 12-year-old sister, attacked and killed 32-year-old Erica. She was stabbed repeatedly inside the home before she stumbled outside and passed away on the front lawn. She was stabbed multiple times in her back and upper torso, had a gunshot wound and a knife sticking out of her back. Just days before the murder, the girls had actually attempted to run Erica over with her own car. The police were called and came out to the home, but Erica decided not to press charges. Hall's aunt says that prior to January 4th, Erica was trying to get the girls help and was considering sending them off because they refused to go to school. If a child is under the age of 16, a parent can take a child with behavioral problems to a youth court to have the court decide if the child qualifies for detention or a training school. It's not clear if that was the motive, but it would make sense that it could be. The girls were sent to a youth detention center, but they were actually released. And I wasn't able to find any updates yet on if they went to trial, what they were sentenced with. So if you guys know, let me know, because I couldn't find anything that says that their trial even started. Everything just says that it's going to start.
Family and friends of 2 teens arrested for the murder of their mother came together for a moment of prayer.
It was rough.
Do you wish you could take back what happened?
Yes.
14-year-old Mariana Hall and her younger sister are accused of murder in the stabbing and shooting of their mom, Erica Hall, January 4th.
Tell me what happened that day that Erica, your mom, died.
The girls didn't want to talk on camera about what happened that fateful day. Off camera, they tell me they are not responsible for their mother's death, that they were at an aunt's home at the time. And Mariana tells me there was abuse in the home where she and her sister lived.
Was any kind of abuse going on?
Yes.
The Pike County Sheriff's Department said it never received any reports of abuse. Both girls are back at home as the case moves forward. And Mariana Hall was released after posting bail. Her sister is also out of the Pike County Juvenile Detention Center.
I got him. Good Lord, I got him. And I also got him some counseling coming and some schooling coming. So everything it's going all right so far.
Eddie Isaac says his daughters are still suffering from the death of their mother. But for now, he is just happy to see his kids again. Isaac says he and others are still trying to get to the bottom of what happened that day.
We feel good to have them out. A lot of people don't think they should be, but they're kids. It was a lot. And we ain't come to the bottom of it, but it was a lot that we didn't know. But it's coming out.
To death by her own teenage daughters. Now, I attended a small memorial and balloon release for Miss Erica Hall and spoke exclusively with the family that says they'll forever keep Erica Hall's memory alive.
This comes exactly 1 year after the then 32-year-old was found shot and stabbed to death at her home in Magnolia. Those who knew and loved Erica say they simply want to remember how amazing the young mother was and says they are still hurting.
We're still in shock of hoping that it's a dream, that someone would tell us that it's a dream, that she's still here, but it's not.
It was Hall's own 2 teenagers, a 12-year-old and then a 14-year-old Mariana Hall, who were arrested last year in her death. And at this time, we still don't know much about the circumstances surrounding the death. Last year, I spoke with the girls.
Tell me what happened that day that Erica, your mom, died. Was any kind of abuse going on?
Yes.
As of now, Amariana Hall has been arraigned and indicted in the murder of her mother. Hall is charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Her sister was arrested and released and has not been charged. Ernestine Hall says they are still trying to cope with the loss of Erica and the estrangement of her two girls, while still trying to piece together what happened.
We want to know who took her life and why was it taken the way it was taken. That's the only thing that we want to know.
The Hall family says they want justice for Erica. Erica Hall leaves behind a fiance, 4 children in total, including a 2-year-old girl. Her aunt had this to say about the mom.
She was a great mom. She wanted the best for her girls. She died trying to provide a life for them. She mainly wanted them to get an education. At the end of the day, there are 2 little girls that's lost. I do believe they're lost, and I pray that one day that God would intervene in their lives and they would give their souls over to God.
Sometimes one incident as it relates to an outward expression of anger can go too far.
I don't know what these girls experienced in their daily life. I don't know what their relationship was like with their mom, but when there's this heightened emotion, you can't help but jump to some conclusions. Or even some thoughts about what triggered this event. And obviously these girls got to a point where they felt like they didn't have any other choice.
Pike County Sheriff Kenneth Cotton tells me his deputies are familiar with the Hall family. He says just days before the murder, Hall's daughters tried to run her over with a car. Ryan Dunlap works at Crossroads Counseling Center. He says many times warning signs go ignored, which allows the problem to fester.
They fear this idea that people are going to find out. They fear that somebody's going to find out that I hit my kid once, or somebody's going to find out that I'm emotionally abusive and that I'm a bad person, and I can't handle that. But the reality is if that's the case, and there's healing to be had.
Psychotherapist Damian Thomas tells me there are also factors that can trigger violent behavior, especially in teens and children.
Truancy, meaning the child is not involved in any type of structured activities, not involved in school. Sometimes it's inconsistent parenting. Sometimes it's a history of mental illness.
Merrill Joan Rogers was born in 1953 in Alberta, Canada. She graduated from the University of Ottawa with a degree in linguistics. After graduation, she began working for the federal government until she retired in 2012 after 35 years of public service. She is also one of the first women in Canada to take full combat training. She was described as a determined, warm, funny, no-nonsense kind of gal who was honest, genuine, and kind. Dave Rogers, who was born in 1947 in Ottawa, Canada, graduated from Carleton University with a degree in political science and journalism. He worked as a journalist for the Ottawa Citizen for 37 years. Dave was described as old school, hardworking, unassuming, and a lovely guy. There was nothing pretentious or loud about him. He was a great reporter and did a rock-solid job on any assignment he was given. Merrill and David loved cycling, traveling, skiing, and gardening. The couple actually met at an Ottawa cycling club and married in 1982 in a small and intimate ceremony. In 1994, the couple adopted a baby boy named Cameron, making them parents for the very first time. A former colleague of Dave says that after adopting Cameron, Merrill and Dave threw themselves into their new role as parents. Dave would confide in coworkers about Cameron's behaviors. Cameron is on the autism spectrum. He had difficulties at school and compulsive behaviors, but it is said that Dave and Merrill never properly addressed the behaviors. They just wanted to make a difference in Cameron's life, and they were so grateful to be parents. Cameron grew very quickly, and by adolescence, he was a fairly big and strong kid. He took up soccer, became a goalie, and thrived at it, but quickly became bored and gave it up. Cameron was really struggling. Dave and Merrill tried to help him the best they could. Coworkers remember Dave telling them that even though he was struggling, he loved Cameron and never regretted the adoption, which makes the following events even more effed up than they would be normally. November 20th, 2016, Cameron walked into the garage of the family home and grabbed a wooden sword. He attacked his mother first, hitting her in the back of the head and then in the face. He then stabbed her in the back and neck. Dave Rogers heard the screaming and came running. Cameron slashed Dave, then stabbed him in the back with so much force that he punctured his father's lung. Dave died very quickly from blood loss, but Merrill lay dying on the kitchen floor for hours. The next day, Cameron stuffed his father into a suitcase and covered his mother with a tarp before dumping their bodies in the backyard by a shed. He would then spend the next week cleaning up the crime scene and making plans to flee the country. When the United States refused him entry, he took a bus back to Montreal and called 911 to report the murders.
Hello?
Hello.
I would like to confess to a murder.
Okay. Well, so where are you?
I actually, I'm on a street, in Montreal. I don't know where that street is.
Well, you need to know if you want me to send somebody.
Yeah, that's true, eh? I'm near a parking garage.
Okay, you need to be more specific. I need an address or intersection.
I'm going to find the street name. An address. Oh, that might work. How is my 1731 Mikado? Does that work?
What's the name of the street?
Mikado?
How do you spell it?
Mikado.
It doesn't exist, sir.
Oh, well, I just read a sign on the house. I'm gonna go up to the corner of the street to see the street name. Okay.
And who did you kill?
My mom and dad.
Okay. Where do they live?
They live in Ottawa.
They live in Ottawa?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have an address?
1614 Appledorn. That's.
How do you spell the street name?
1614 and then APELDOORN.
Okay. Hey, what's your name?
My name is Cameron. Cameron Rogers.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
22.
Here's the street. Ontario and Savoie.
Okay. Are you gonna stay on the corner?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I will stay.
So what are you wearing? The clothing?
I'm wearing an orange, puffy coat and orange mitts with jeans.
Okay, so orange coat, and you're 22. Okay.
Yes, and I have a hoodie on. A hood.
Okay. What color do you do?
Huh?
What color do you do?
What?
Your shirt is what color?
Well, the shirt is orange and the hoodie is blue.
Okay, so your jacket is orange and the hoodie is blue?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send somebody to go and talk to you and just see what's going on, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Steve Gleddy, Merrill's closest brother, was born on the same day as her, 2 years apart. He looked his sister's killer in the eyes at his trial and told him about the devastation he had brought upon their family. He also told him, "I won't turn my back on you. I want to forgive you." Merrill's brother Gordon Gleddy told Cameron that he completed their lives and he was their greatest pride and joy. Cameron made allegations of SA from his father, which he would later retract and say that they were false. His uncle would say, because of these false SA claims, this added to the family's suffering and living nightmare. He would say, there is solace, though, in knowing that Cameron has recanted these false accusations. Graham Gleddy has actual nightmares about his nephew. He falls asleep with over-the-counter sleep aids and alcohol. He often thinks of November 20th, 2016, when he called the family home looking to speak to his sister. Cameron lied and told him she was in bed with the flu, but at that very moment, his sister was slowly dying. Graham goes on to tell Cameron, quote, You had a choice when I called you, and you chose the most heartless path forward. You were the center of their world. What happened, damn it? Cameron, you scare me. I fear the day you will be released. Ontario Superior Court Justice Kevin Phillips said that this case does not make sense. It's hard to accept that rules and discipline could lead to the amount of violence seen on this night. Dave and Merrill were good people with so much love to give. The judge goes on to say, they went after you, Cameron, because they wanted to give that love to you. Your actions were so horrible, so as to defy description. The judge then called Roger's decision to make false allegations against his father calculated and fundamentally wrong. The judge warned that there was something deeply wrong with him and told Cameron he was going to go away for a long time. Judge Phillips then asked Cameron to choose a better path, telling him, "You're more fortunate than you think. Your family is still there for you despite what you have done." Cameron was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 20 years. If and when he is paroled, he'll be subject to a lifetime weapons ban and must submit his DNA to a databank.
We're happy this is resolved. This is a horrible family tragedy. We never expected ever to find ourselves in such a situation. For the day he is released, I do. A lot of our extended family does. There were victim impact statements from family on the West Coast, family in the southern U.S. They're all very scared for us because realistically, one day he will be released.
I think everyone wants to hear from Cameron the why. Ultimately, that is always the question from everyone. I think either from family, from the community at large, is they want to hear why. Why did you do this, Cameron? And maybe one day we will, but until then, I think that's always going to be in the back of people's minds. I think the fact that he lied and made these allegations against his father shows some of his character, shows some selflessness on his part, shows some willingness to try to get away with this. And that was shown at the onset, living in the house for a week after the murders of his parents, trying to conceal their bodies in the backyard, trying to escape into the U.S. That was all part of his planning. And that shows some of his character, and that's what you can take away from those actions.
For example, in my victim impact statement, I explained that throughout the trial, the theme had been developing that Merrill was a bit too much of a disciplinarian. I am more of a disciplinarian than he is, because he takes advantage of things, and he takes them to an extreme. He ran that show.
And you said you wanted to warn me of regrets.
Well, we tried to, but Merrill and Dade loved Cameron so much, and they did not want to hear. If we ever veered towards trying to say anything mildly negative about Cameron, they just shut us down. I spoke to Cameron when he was in the middle of killing my sister. My sister had asked me to call between 2 and 4. He started the attack at 11 a.m. And according to Cameron's own testimony to Detective Kelton, Merrill was still alive. She was moaning. She was moaning on the floor of the kitchen. He gouged out her right eye. She had multiple stab wounds, and she was in great pain, moaning on the ground. I was chatting with Cameron on that phone in the kitchen, I believe, is where he was, and he was very calmly telling me everything was fine.
It's behind the shed, a blue tarp. So I looked from my window and I see a blue tarp.
He moved out? Because I know they found him in Montreal. Do you know anything sort of?
No, I saw him a few days ago. I tried last night to remember, when did I see him last, but I didn't really remember. But I remember seeing him maybe 2, 3, 4 days ago. I don't remember.
What can you say about the couple that was living there? What do you know about them? How they were with you?
Not much. All the couples are very discreet. Not much. But, friendly, and they're not out very often. Only spring and summer. She likes gardening big time.
Did you know the son a little bit?
Yeah, he used to play soccer on the street. Sometimes, I kick a ball or two with him. That's about it, yeah. I know they were trying very hard to get him into education. I remember them asking me about AutoCAD, teacher for him, and I was able to get him 1 or 2. Tried to get him into college, but
in college, yeah.
I don't think he was.
Yeah, he wasn't there. Yeah.
Have you ever seen some dispute here?
No, never.
Problems between the son and the family?
Okay, guys, if you're still here, thank you. It means everything to me. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know your thoughts on this. And the craziest of all is that there's still so many stories of kids killing their parents. It's mind-blowing. I actually thought I would have a hard time finding so many stories, and I'm overwhelmed with the amount of stories that I have found. But until next time, guys,